packages, I felt like needed to be like a 3-week workshop because there's just so much that's involved with them. So on the first workshop, we went ahead and covered how to bring it up in conversation, what things will help you sell them and add them into either the entry fee or to go ahead and sell it at a tournament that first year. And Michael French will tell you that's usually what happens, in that very first time that you're talking to tournaments or you're new with us, because by the time you find a flyer, they're already pretty set in stone on their pricing. So that first year, it's okay to go ahead and sell them at registration. But I would always bring up that, hey, this is really normal for first year events. We can come out, we'll sell it for you. But generally, most events can't wait to build this in because now they can highlight it on their flyers. They can use different pieces of it to cover sponsorships or get sponsorships from this and so on. And so this week, I really wanted to focus on what you want to send them in an email. And I created a couple different templates to make sure I wasn't forgetting, and so I'll send these all with the recording to everybody so you guys have them. But then how to go ahead and coordinate with the golf course and why you want to coordinate with them. And then, of course, how to order and prepare yourself for that event. So for your first prep, right? I would consider this your first prep, and then your second prep would be getting all of the materials together later on. So tonight we're going to go over, that you need to let the event know what you need in that template email. So a couple things I can think of off the top of my head would be if they already had different holes in mind for contests, you definitely need their logo. And then I would find out if you kind of have like the freedom to go ahead and pitch what you want to do with the course to kind of keep everything even, if you will, between our fundraiser holes and then also all the different contest holes that'll be included in any one of our player packages. And if you guys, have studied our different levels, that $50 level has a lot going on. So it would be better if we kind of helped control some of that. And the biggest thing to keep in mind too is that we want to take that workload off of them. So that's one of the things that you're pitching to them to get them to say yes, is that we are covering a lot of this so they don't have to worry about it. And then once you're in there and you get the, the go ahead from them, then you want to go ahead and coordinate with the golf course on what those best holes are, and you want to be friendly. You want to make sure that you guys are working together. And so it actually took me, and I don't know why, I guess I can blame it on being young, but it took me a while to realize that you do want to get a hold of them ahead of time. I used to rely a lot on like that charity, just knowing what to do. And we were just going to cover the prizes with our player packages. But I started to realize really fast that a lot of things start to slip through the cracks, that the charity is all over the place, and they've been planning this for months, but there's a lot going on the day of, it's a really long day for them. And they're just trying to stay on top of all like their vendors, their sponsors, the players, their, prizes, setting up the banquet, making sure everything just runs smoothly. That if you can at least coordinate with the golf course and that they're excited to work with you, that only helps you in so many other ways. If they see that you are helping take that workload off of that event shoulders, then it would be natural for them to wonder, about having you out there and helping a lot of the other tournaments that are hosted at their course. So I feel like later on down the road, you could end up white labeling with them, is what we call it. And that might open up the conversation to talk to them about our hero program as well. So just keep those things in mind when you are coordinating with the golf course. But I'll go through here in a minute on different things and really breaking down like what you are going to bring up to them. So going on to the next. Okay, so I'm going to zoom in. So I have 2 different templates that I'll send in the email along with the recording. But this first one is what I send to a tournament when we are going to sell a player package at registration first. So I'd rather dive in and show you guys what things are included. I know everybody can open up that email, but I feel like I want to kind of explain a few different things that you'll want to make sure that you are changing. So of course, the name of the person that you're in contact with. This event is actually one of the events that we are a part of again this year. in Southern California. So I just put on there, you know, what the date is, the name of their tournament, where their tournament is at. And to be honest, I started adding a lot of the stuff into those emails because I would mix them up, you know, and like once you start working with so many events and you start getting anywhere from 5 to 10 or more, you know, events on that same single day, they all start to blend. And so at first it might not seem like that would happen, but trust me, it does. So you want to go ahead and put that in there. And then I always attach our deck to everything just so they can refer back. No matter what, you know, you had talked about, it'll end up helping you down the road. And I always bring up and underline, you know, which programs you talked about adding. So for this one, for example, we're going to do the hero hole, the crank it hole, and then we always have a long drive entertainer plus the $20 super ticket. So 4 programs might seem like a lot. The reason why I feel like this will be okay is because, well, one, last year it went amazing. But because the super ticket is always something that you want to think about that is completely separate from an on-course fundraiser. So because you're at check-in, you're selling this and the players are opting in or out, you don't have to worry about it hurting any of the sales out on the course later on. The one thing I do always leave up to the tournament is how many fundraiser holes, and they had requested a long drive entertainer. So we're going to have all 3 of those programs out on the holes. And when that happens, it is very important that you are, you know, checking all of the plans to make sure that all 3 of those fundraiser holes, since generally we do 2, are evenly spaced. So I did the best I could. I even brought up, you know, that they agreed to the $20 super ticket, but that this year, you know, and just reminding them it's a $20 super ticket, but when we sell it at the registration table for $40. And then I went over, you know, the layout and what we did last year. And from there, then I bold what information I need from them. So that would bring up, you know, which 2 contests would you like us to cover prizes for, since they get the option. And on the deck, it does say 2 prizes if you have under 100 golfers, 4 if you have more than 100 golfers. But when you're selling it, I have gotten into some sticky situations over the years. So if you just bank on giving them 2 contests because you have no idea how many you're going to sell, then the company will never be upside down. And you won't be over promising, you know, and being like, uh-oh, we only sold this many, you know. So count on 2 contests if you're selling it, but if it's included, then you can base it off of the 2 to 4, you know, with how many golfers they're going to have. We also need to know which premium hole-in-one prize they want. And then we need either their logo or any other logos that they might want highlighted, you know. So I know one of my contacts, Carla, for example, she's based out of Newport and Arizona. She bounces back and forth. And the events I've done with her, she always includes all of her biggest sponsors on that super ticket that we hand out when they buy it. So it's just another way for her to, you know, brand and thank their biggest sponsors. So we don't mind. I'm like, it's just copy and pasting a logo. And if that'll help them in the long run, then awesome. So, and then what I go over too, and I'll try to zoom this a little bit more just in case, but I go over, you know, once I have this information from you, then I'm going to coordinate the course on this. And so again, I started getting really clear so that they know exactly what I'm covering. We're on the same page, but then I can't forget, to be honest, you know? And so then that way, there might be a hole, and I think the hardest one to pick out is always the longest drive hole, because if you don't know that course, you can always look up yardages, but it's never going to tell you clearly when you're looking at a scorecard online. If there is like a ravine right through the middle of the fairway, or if, you know, there's a dogleg left somewhere. So that is one reason why I started calling them a lot, was to just double check which longest drive holes they generally use. And then what's also nice is that they are going to set up, you know, all of those markers for the tournament. And so by you know, coordinating with them, then everyone is on the same page. They'll relay all the information that you worked out with them to the tournament. And so it'll run really smoothly. And then the other big thing that you definitely want to make sure that you coordinate and are completely on the same page about would be running the $100,000 shootout from A to Z. So I try to see if I can get them to help me with announcing. Some courses won't have a way of announcing with a microphone. So they might already have somebody in mind who has a loud voice that can help, gather people, or they'll bring in a system, have some sort of like PA system or something, right? So what I try to do is, because you are selling, especially when you're there for registration for 1 to 2 hours, however long they're running it for. I always try to suggest to run it for 2 hours, because people are going to show up 2 hours early regardless. You might as well be set up and ready to get those people in faster. But while you're selling, you don't want to have to be forced to get away from that check-in table and have to go run that shootout. So if they already know that you're going to like run over there and give them the 4 random names from the scratch cards, which is what I suggest doing. What I do is I fan out all the scratch cards. So let me go back. And I pick the charity people running it. And I just ask them to pick 4 random names. And then those are going to be the names for the shootout. I also have had tournaments ask if they can give me 4 names, which is totally up to them. I just wouldn't want people to really know, that. So I would want it to be like kept, I guess like on close wraps. But generally, most people will pick from those scratch cards, and then I would go run those over to the golf course, whoever's announcing. So then they can then handle getting those 4 people wherever they might be at. Half of them are going to be getting drinks or catching up with a buddy. Other people are going to be at the putting green or warming up somewhere. And so if they can at least coordinate that, since that does take some time, like rounding them all up, explaining that they need to grab their 150-yard club, a ball, and a tee if they want, then that would be amazing. And then I always bring up that we need to get those people to whatever green is closest to the clubhouse. So then everybody can come crowd around and watch. It's always super exciting running these shootouts. And so everybody wants to be over there. But if they have a 6-seater cart, or if they can just put aside a couple carts for those people in the shootout and yourself, and if there's somebody from the charity or a photographer that wants to come out, then we have enough room. So then all of us can quickly get over there. And another thing a lot of the golf courses do that I ask them is to mark that 150-yard mark perfectly. So every hole, for the most part, will have a 150-yard mark, but that doesn't mean it's exactly 150 yards from the pin. And for insurance purposes, it has to be exact. So that's kind of like in their plans. They will send somebody out, when they're putting out the T signs or just helping get set up for the day. They'll, shoot it with their rangefinder and then put a mark out there so that you know exactly where to go and it can be seamless. So getting them on your, on your side and on your team for that is really helpful. I did see a couple things in the chat though. Does anybody have any questions so far?
Quick question. So I'm sorry, I don't know where the shootout is. So can you explain to me, like, does every golfer participate in the shootout, or just the people that paid within the registration fee, or like what is even a shootout?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our $100,000 shootout, we generally do it about 15 to 20 minutes before all the golfers take off to go play. Depending on, and that's why you want to coordinate with the tournament first, they might have, announcements, they might have somebody come sing like the national anthem, they might just have other stuff going on. I've even had tournaments do like the helicopter ball drop before the players take off. So you want to coordinate with them on the time. But for the most part, they're going to have you do that shootout about 15 to 20 minutes before they all go play. Now, the shootout, we cover the insurance for it. So it's to win $100,000. And we pick 4 random people to do that. And so the charity can either give you 4 names, but generally you want to keep it random so that everybody has the opportunity of being in it. And you'll take those 4 people. You'll coordinate with the course on which green is closest to the clubhouse. So then that way we'll take them out 150 yards and they're essentially trying for a hole-in-one.
I just wanted to add to that, Audra, when you are communicating with, the charity, one thing I did learn from Jay, watching him at a couple celebrity events, it was kind of cool because, you can approach the charity director or let's say Mike Tice in this scenario. We were at the Mike Tice event. We do his event every year with all of the NFL players. But Jay went up and he said, hey, Mike, do you want to go ahead and pick the golfers that you think that would actually make this shot? And we'll go ahead and announce them. You
Give
could
them like a better advantage, to make it.
because and we want them to make that shot, so you can always coordinate with that, and that just makes the charity feel a little bit better. Like, we are really trying to get them to make this shot. So that's just a tip that I've learned from Jay, from Audra. I wanted to say that. And then Audra, there was a question in the chat. Could you please describe what white labeling is to some of the newer folks?
Yeah. So white labeling would be I feel like my personal biggest goal with the golf course. So as awesome as it is to have a course allow us to come out and fundraise about once a month, depending on the type of course with our hero program, we know that we make a lot more money, and we have the opportunity to be at that course, depending on the course, of course, but we have the opportunity to be on that course a lot more if they do what we call white labeling with some of our programs. So what that would mean is, and what we started at first was taking our par 3 program with the hero hole, turning it into TSP. And what the golf course would do, they are adding that par 3 program into their contract. So when an organization comes to them and tells them, hey, I'm looking at hosting my tournament, and they're vetting out different courses to have their tournament then this is another way for that golf course to kind of have a leg up on those other golf courses in the area. Because by us being in that contract, then now that golf tournament automatically has a free hole-in-one, somebody covering their closest to the pin prizes, somebody giving out, virtual gift bags and Cancun trip savings passes. We're fundraising for them, but they can do it with any of our programs. So I've also worked with a couple courses in California, and they have actually loved the different player packages. And so a couple of them started adding in that $20 super ticket into their contracts. And so for a while there, I was getting a little nervous because of how many events were coming through. But what was really nice is the golf course already knows how to do a lot of that. So I would go, and once they got one booked, they would send me the contact information to follow up, so I could help coordinate. But then that gave me the opportunity to pitch them on all the other programs that we offer. So even if the golf course did go ahead and handle the $100,000 shootout, the scratch card at check-in, then I could just go assist them, bring them the prizes. If we had ordered the tee boxes, for example, ahead of time, which are some of the prizes. And then I would go out and work my hole and then just help them at the banquet afterward with whatever they needed. So my biggest goal is to always get a course on board, with Hero, but then to eventually end up white labeling with them so you can work all of their tournaments. Some courses, I would think some of the private courses, especially, they don't really host very many outside events. But then you'll talk to other golf courses like Bay Point up here in Panama City Beach, and they said that they host 70-something tournaments throughout the year. So there's a lot of opportunity for you to make even more money that way.
Before we leave the super ticket shootout,
yeah,
what I've found is it's really necessary to tell the 4 players that are chosen to bring at least 3 different clubs for different distances, because sometimes it's uphill, sometimes it's into the wind, maybe it's downwind. So that 150 yards might end up being 170 yards or 130 yards in actual playability.
That's a great point. I've actually never done that, but I've been out there and people have been like, oh my gosh, I grabbed the wrong club because of the wind, And
Right.
so somebody's been like, well, you can hit mine if you want, but it's a totally different club. So I'm like, I love that question.
So this last tournament I just did on Friday for the GAA Cougar Pride, they chose 2 people prior, and then they randomly chose 2.
Ooh,
so
okay.
I thought that was cool because it was like, do you have 2 people in mind? And then let's randomly choose it. Cause then, everything I've been saying since 7 o'clock this morning is
It's true.
it's true, it's like we are randomly choosing them. And then
That would be my biggest worry. So I'm glad you said that, because
Yeah.
if they choose them, then again, you're lying to them, because at registration, sorry, but to like touch on that, like at registration, you're telling them, oh yeah, you could be one of the 4. Well, you would be lying to them if you knew that tournament was going to give you 4 names anyway. So great point.
And a couple of them, I'm always joking with them as they come through. And I say, okay, if you don't warm up, your name's going to be chosen. Well, literally the 2 that were chosen did not warm up. So it was pretty funny. I go, did you guys warm up? They're like, no. And so, and then I always, I do say, hey, bring a couple clubs, and you can bring a tee. It's okay. Like, we don't care. You can bring a tee, bring a couple clubs with you, and let's go make this shot. And they get real excited. So
I love that. And then I think I heard Alec. Did you have a question also?
Yes, ma'am. So when you were talking about the white labeling, getting in a contract, if one of them says, hey, I want to do this more often, and we talk to them about it a little bit, like, what does that entail for their contract? When can they change their package? Like, if they want to just join up for a thing or 1 or 2 events or programs immediately, but they want to sign on for some more after the first tournament we do because we're kicking butt. How does that go? Or do we just push them off to our manager immediately and kind of play dumb?
So any of the managers are more than welcome to help. I know we have a couple different teams on this call. So if you're unsure what to do, I'm like, call your manager, they'll help you. But I'm like, generally, like, say today, we went around to courses, Carter and I with Alec, and we talked to them. We got more business cards today since a lot of courses were aerating. But say we had gotten into a meeting and they were interested in white labeling, like one of our courses in Crestview, and he totally got it right away. He was like, oh my gosh, this is genius. He was like, yes, that'll help me book more tournaments. So I'm going to add this to our contracts, like effective immediately for any new ones. And then any tournaments that had already signed contracts with him that were coming up, or, even like the next few months, then he personally reached out to them to at least send them our information, and just left it up to them, on whether or not they wanted to contact us. But I love that Michael does that out there, because he'll always CC me on those emails, and he's like, hey, like, I fully recommend them. I feel like you should see what they have to offer. They'd be a great fit. And I can't imagine he does it to like everybody, but the ones that have at least 60 players or more would be a great fit. And then what's nice about them already being a hero course, say they did have a smaller tournament that had 40 to 60 golfers, then because they're a hero course already, then you can find out if they have play like before that tournament and after, and now you've had an even better day, and you're not just relying on the money, to fundraise for those 40 to 60 golfers. Now you've made money all day long. And then I usually tell that tournament, like, hey, I'm going to stay out there all day long. So if you aren't in a rush to get your closest to the pin money, or like your percentage from the TSP, then I could potentially give you way more if I stick around out there longer. So Michael does that with us a lot out there. Did that answer your question, Alec?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, awesome.
Audra?
Oh yeah. Hey,
I
Michael.
have a question, Michael, here in Arizona. Real quickly, I've been doing this for a long time, had a lot of $100 or $100,000 shootouts. What is the procedure if someone actually makes the shot?
Oh my gosh. Take as many pictures as you possibly can and get as much info on that person as possible. So I'm like, I'm not kidding. I'm like, get like their name, phone number, mailing address, email. And then in the super ticket paperwork that we get sent to us from our insurance company, they will have like very intense instructions. So this just came up this year with a hole-in-one that was made, but the golf tournament had told me that they had 120 golfers, for example. I'm like, I might be off on the numbers, but they ended up that day with 133, and they allow for a certain percentage to be off, but it went over that. So that hole-in-one winner they negotiated with him, but he did not win that prize because they didn't update me on the updated number of golfers. So I know that like that contract that they send to Elite and then to, I believe, whoever books it, I usually get them, we'll have all of that information to make sure you do it all correctly, that you get it in a timely manner. I know that was another big thing. They need to be notified within like 24 to 48 hours. But if I can get a sample copy of one of those, I just need to double check I'm allowed to send one of those out. Then I'll send that out with this recording as well. So you guys can get, well versed on all of that and just know everything you need to know.
Thank you. Because it's different when we do the hero hole, because I've had a hole in one on the hero.
Yeah. So on the hero hole, I'm like, it's just such a small dollar amount. They're so much more flexible, but $100,000 and like a trip to the Masters, those are expensive prizes. So they are really strict on those. And unfortunately, we learned the hard way. I think that was earlier this year, right, Noelani?
Yeah, it was just a couple months ago. And I mean, even if you, like the day of the event, if you call and let Amanda know, like, hey, they've upped it to this amount, she'll let, our insurance company know. But it's always best to have like, witnesses, anyone who was there, someone who is like an official from the golf course, witness it. And like Audra was saying, we have relationships with our golf courses because we call them beforehand and work this out. So, and they're aware. I go, listen, at the end of the day, what I have on this insurance is what you're going to put down, like that's what we got down for insurance. So, and they're always very, very like, yeah, we understand. We know this. We deal with this kind of stuff all the time. So, they're always very awesome to work with, but yeah, that's definitely something to make sure about. So
thank you for adding that. Fully spaced witnesses. That's very important.
Yeah, I always try to get out there with my phone and take a video of each player as they're taking their shot from right behind them. That way, if it does go in, you've got absolute proof that it happened.
That's a great idea. And I usually do it out of habit because for so many years I was running our like social media pages. So I thought it was exciting to post a couple of them, but that's a great point that you should just do that anyway, just in case it's all on camera. Okay. So I will send this template out. And then I want to briefly go over the difference of this one. I would say that the biggest difference on here is making sure that it's very clear, one, again, which program they decided to do or which package and dollar amount. And then in this one, it brings up how they pay it and when. So then that way, everybody's on the same page. They know that they can pay any day before the tournament. Generally, what they'll do is they'll pay the day of and either want to pay with a card or they'll write a check, to Elite. And we will give them up to 2 business days after that tournament. But a lot of times they're just like us. And if they have this in writing and they're already prepared for it, they'll already have, like their company or charity card on, ready for you, or that check already filled out and ready for you also. I am telling you guys, I have been through it all when it comes to tournaments. So I've gotten there and been like, did I tell them that they need to like pay me today? And I'd be like going through all my emails and I'm like, I don't know if this was one of the tournaments that I talked to or not. And so they would start to blend. So again, I'm like, I would just copy this. I would make those small changes on like the names, the holes and different things like that. And make sure because everything is in there, so you cannot forget anything. So I'll make sure both of these are in there, but because this package is built in, that's why that tournament would be paying for that. But keep in mind to kind of go back on what we talked about last week, regardless of if it's a $20, $25 or $50 package that they're building in, it's still not technically coming out of the charity's pockets, right? Like they're not paying us for that. They built it into their entry fee. So if they were, wanting to sell their entry fee for golfers at $125 and they choose a $25 package, then we suggest bumping it up, to $150 so that it fits in there. Nothing came out of their pockets and they can just pay us the day of, in case they have, last minute people checking in and stuff like that. So you want to make sure you have that in mind, that it's not, none of our programs are ever, an expense item for them. It's always an income item. And I also lay out in this, and I want to make sure you can see it. I don't know if this black bar is in your guys' way, but right here, I bring up how you can break down every little piece of our player packages and they can use it as sponsorship opportunities. So I bring up that they can set the price at any level, but now they can actually have a sponsor come in and cover, the player package itself. That could be a sponsorship. The most popular one where they can actually add, multiple logos, it doesn't have to just be one person, is that hole-in-one sign. The hole-in-one sign is the one sign people really pay attention to all day long. I bring up that I've been to, thousands of tournaments over the years, and I can't think of one company that I've seen on those signs ever. But if I was playing, I would be paying attention to and reading all of like the rules and what I get, if I get the hole-in-one and everything. And so I probably would remember which logo was on that sign over all of them. And then, so that'll give you ideas. But the big thing is we want them to know by them building this in that it doesn't necessarily cost them anything. It should, if they add all these different cool items onto like their flyers, that can actually attract more players and better sponsors by them putting on there that they're going to have a $100,000 shootout, that they say they picked the Super Bowl for their hole-in-one prize. I'm like, that's really exciting. I'm like, I want to go to the Super Bowl. I've never been. So I would want to play or be a part of a tournament that's displaying that, on their flyer. So it really does help them just attract everybody to that event. Does anybody have any questions on this one? Yes, Michael.
I've got another question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they paying for registered golfers or golfers that show up if it's built in?
So that's a great question. It's for the amount of registered golfers. And what I tell them is that I would need a better idea of what they're expecting about, gosh, I know Amanda will want me to say 2 weeks. I push the buttons, do 2 weeks, you won't get in trouble. But what I also tell them is if they get more golfers than what they're expecting, that I do need to update that number because of insurance. So I never want that to happen again, where somebody could possibly not win a hole-in-one or be eligible to win the $100,000 shootout if they make it. So I just tell them like, hey, give me a tentative number. And so that everybody understands, they have to do that with their food and beverage people. They have to do it with the golf course. Like everybody that's helping them put this on at the golf course, they need those numbers too. So it's not weird for us to ask. They have to have a general number. And then if it happens to be more, then they can always update us after. Okay. And I'm going to see if I can make this disappear. Okay. So, coordinating would be the next step, right? So, what you'll want to do, or what I do, is I actually look up a lot of scorecards online. You can get most of the information that you need by looking them up, and I'll literally type in, Temecula Creekin, or let's not use that one. That one has 3 9s. That one's a nightmare. Let's use Journey at Pechanga. Journey Pechanga golf course scorecard. I know for Southern California, Greenskeeper, I think it's greenskeeper.com, is a really popular website. And I'm still learning the ones here in Florida, but I want to say like Blue Golf and maybe one other one is what I use a lot out here. Either way, Google it. You'll be able to pull up the scorecard online for that golf course. And I would start there with what kind of makes sense to you, but at least you can set up like, okay, I always look at the yardages for the par 3s first. That way I can set up the correct hole for our TSP. Then I look for the opposite side, to set up the crank-it hole. So they're on almost exact opposite sides if you have both those programs, of course. And then from there, I would figure out, okay, with our other or par 3s, which one would have a longer distance so our insurance isn't as high when you get them a longer distance for our hole-in-one. And then depending on what programs they pick, then I would try to, again, make things even, but set up a hole that you want to do closest to the pin, and then longest drive And those are going to change based off of the tournament you're doing this with. But the hardest one I kind of mentioned earlier to pick out on a scorecard would be the longest drive hole. So that's where you're going to call the course to confirm what you're thinking and just double check, like, hey, are these good holes for that? Do they have blind spots? Like, what do you suggest or what do you see a lot? And then make changes and go from there. And then again, I would make sure, which I already kind of mentioned, that you are on the exact same page with the golf course on all the contest holes, because they're going to handle those markers, right? So they'll put them out for longest drive, closest to the pin. If they're doing straightest drive or closest to the line, if they allow it, they'll put a line in the fairway for you. I've even had them set up putting contests for me. They generally don't run the putting contest, but they'll set it up so you're good to go. And then again, like fundraiser holes, and then help with the $100,000 shootout. So from there, once you have things planned with them, I would double check with the event hosts, or the, charity or organization to make sure that this works for their plans, because they're also trying to balance which hole sponsors are going on. Most events don't have a sponsor on every hole. They might have a T sign for every hole, but it's definitely the more elite, events that would have sponsors on every hole. I'm like, Magali, if she's still on this call, her last event was awesome out here in Florida, and she did have a sponsor on every hole with a setup. And so in that case, you'd probably be good to go. But one thing I totally want to make sure I point out is if they don't have a ton of physical hole sponsors that are going to have a setup, I would make sure that, I guess just in general, if they'll use one of those to cover our hole-in-one that's included in our player package, then that keeps them from needing volunteers to go ahead and cover that hole. And then for that sponsor, they're going to pay more to be on that hole because people are going to be excited. They're going to be paying attention. They will probably get the credit for that hole-in-one, even though they didn't pay for the insurance. And so they can coordinate with them to make sure that they are watching. And if somebody were to get it, what to do and everything. So it takes, again, like the pressure off of that event. And I don't know when I even thought to do that. Like we were in a pinch and they had no volunteers. And so it just worked out. And ever since then, a lot of tournaments are like, oh my gosh, that's a great idea. So make sure you guys do that. Any questions on this page at all with coordinating? Okay. So I put the link on here, but I will make sure it's in the email that I send out after this. So when you order, once you get all that information together, you have everything, then on the CRM, you'll go to that actual event page. And I can show you guys on the CRM in a second how to find it, but you'll click, was this super ticket or ECP ordered? You'll click on one of those buttons. Honestly, I can't remember right now off the top of my head if it's yes. I think it's yes. And then it'll open up this jot form. So you'll go to the jot form and you'll go in and fill in all the information that you've gathered from them. I would probably suggest too, as you guys are new and trying to figure this out, I would already go in and save some of these pages or write down, what information you need, because it is easy to forget. So let's open this up and I can show you guys. So first part's pretty easy, right? You'll put your name, your email, your information. And then from here, things like remembering the shotgun start time and the registration start time. A lot of tournaments do this differently. Some tournaments are sticklers for a 2-hour registration time to give people an ample amount of time to be there and get warmed up. Other tournaments only give them an hour and people are flying through like crazy and it's, insane. So you'll want to get both of those times, the expected number of players. And I would always err on having a little bit more. The name of the golf course, the address. And so you guys, get the gist of it, but you'll just go through here. And again, you'll pick, 50-50 split with the $100,000 shootout, the whole number for the shootout. This is all information that, that our insurance needs whenever you're putting these on. So then again, if you click closest to the pin and longest drive, then you'll want to put, the whole number so that we know. And then that way, if you need assistance in putting together a super ticket flyer, then we already have all that information. And, whether it's Leslie or, Norlani's really good at it. I've been doing way too many of them. And so any one of us can help you throw together a super ticket flyer to then hand out and have on your table for display. So does anybody have any questions at this point? Because I think that was generally what I wanted to cover for tonight.
Again, I'm sorry, Audra. I'm gonna
That's okay.
put the hell out of you today.
Michael Clancy, I think everybody enjoys your questions because they're
Yes, I'm sure they do. They love it when I
And
ask
you're
questions. They
asking.
sit
We
there and
all
take a
do.
breath. Yeah. We used to ask for money ahead of time. Do we ask for advance at all anymore, or is that completely out? We just get our pay on the day of or a day after, something like that.
So the way I worded it in my email is that they can pay for it ahead of time, but we're not sticklers about it like we used to be. Reason being that started to deter a lot of my events where if I just made it to like, hey, you can pay me the day of, then they were like, okay, you know, but them getting all that money together and say this is like their first or second tournament and they're just not really sure how much money they're going to have on hand to just work out, then that does scare people. So of course they can definitely pay you ahead of time. If you guys get their credit card or have them send a check ahead of time, corporate can run that for you. So it's not being ran through your own Square account. You don't have to pay the fees for that. And then just keep in mind that whenever corporate does run it, then you'll be paid on that player package that's sold anywhere from a week and a half to 2 weeks after, because corporate does all of our reconciling for events. The max would be 2 weeks after all those events happen. So yeah, I'm like, I've even had a tournament hand me cash because I got in so many so much cash that day at the tournament. So I try to just give them their options, but it gives them peace of mind and they're more willing to book with you this first year. If they can pay you the day of, you know, once registration's done with or at the banquet, or up to 2 business days after. Anybody else have any questions? I know that this is probably foreign to a lot of you, and especially if you've come on board in the last week, you'll want to make sure you play last week's workshop for sure.
Audra, we have a group chat question from Noelani. What does the rep pay for a super ticket?
So great question. On any of our player packages, every level makes 5% less than what they normally would. So if you're an ATM and you normally make 20% out on the course, with a player package, you make 15%. So same thing with a rep. Noelani, what I would say to that too is it would be very rare for a rep to book a super ticket. If they do, we need to move them up. But say they did because they have, you know, great connections and they're trying to get up to being an ATM. They would make 10% on a player package. And then they would still make, of course, if they book the Cricket Hole or the TSP, then they'll make their normal percentage on course fundraising. Is there anything else I missed in the chat, Leslie?
That's it for now, but you've been answering these questions so well. And I just want to give you a quick shout out because this presentation's been amazing. You have done all the work for all of this workshop, all 3 of them. So you're doing a really good job.
I'm like, thank you. I'm excited to have Leslie's help next week to really show what it's like the day of and how to prepare the night before. So I just want you guys to be aware next week we're gonna I always kind of turn my office into like a madhouse a little bit. I'm printing off little mini super tickets. I'm putting my table flyers in like multiple plastic, you know, things for the table. I'm making sure I got my pens and my pennies and all these things. I'm double, triple checking everything. So I can't forget my hole-in-one sign, everything. Packing my car the night before, you know, and so we really want to do a good job of showing you next week how you run it and how you prepare for it the night before, A to Z, because when you guys first experience one, those 2 hours of registration or however long they give you are seriously a whirlwind. Like you'll look up and be like, oh my gosh, it's time to go out to my hole. Where'd the time go? Because people are just coming in, you know, and like all of a sudden you'll have a gap and then you'll have 10 different golfers coming through that you have to pitch and try to sell. Or if it's built in, you're just handing them out, having them play their scratch cards. So I'm really excited for next week. I love doing player packages. And then keep in mind for anybody who wasn't on last week's call, What I love the most about these is that generally you can book this program without doing a ton of work, right? So once you get this down, it's pretty easy to just coordinate. But say you're getting to that event 2 hours earlier than you would have. Now you have the opportunity to make, several $100s more than you would have had you just gone and done your online or your on-course fundraising. So I like adding them in whenever I possibly can for events. I know in California, we do a ton of them. We have, I think, several this weekend coming up that poor Noelani is trying to coordinate right now, all the holes and all the things on. So make sure you guys are on next week. And then does anybody else have any other questions before I stop the recording at all?
Thank you, Audra. I think you've made it sound really simple. There's a lot of moving parts, definitely, but it's well worth the effort. To make the effort. It really is. You make a lot of money doing this.
It really is. And we will
It's
have
worth everybody's while, believe me.
it is worth everybody's while, and we will have visuals to where you guys can see Audra and I out on the course, mostly Audra, actually. I'm behind the camera filming her, but you'll be able to see her, taking in the scratch cards, A to Z, what registration looks like. You'll be able to see her running the $100,000 shootout, all the golfers taking their shots, all of the golfers watching and getting super excited. We'll have visuals for all of that next week. So please be on next week.
Yes. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'll let you guys go a little bit early and we'll talk to you guys soon.